how's it going, guys? It's Technical Tim here. I want to thank everyone so much who's been liking all my videos and subscribing to the channel, and I'd really appreciate it if you gave this video a thumbs up or subscribe if you haven't already. And I'm just going to do a quick recap video of the Hermanson Cannoneer card. Overall, I won a couple units. It was most of my money. If you include that and Bellator, I'll go over a little bit of Bellator too. Maybe I'll get Bellator out of the way first. But a lot of my money lines hit. Some of my props missed, but I ended up profiting a little bit, so that's good. So yeah, I'll talk about Bellator first. So my Caldwell pick hit. I ended up throwing quite a bit on him. The line kept closing. And yeah, I think I tracked like 3.5 or so units on Caldwell, so it's actually kind of a big play for me. So I ended up playing him. The fight kind of went as I expected. I just thought Caldwell was going to out-wrestle him, and he kind of ended up doing that. He does really struggle with mat returns when he has a standing back take, and his go-to is he holds a body lock, and then he shifts his legs. So this leg will come over, and he uses this leg to like trip the guy on the back. So he'll like shift his legs, and he does that all the time. It ends up not working because a lot of a lot of Bellator guys are just well-rounded and have pretty good wrestling. And yeah, so he's not great at breaking bases whenever he kind of has standing back takes either. So that's kind of like that's why a lot of these fights, like him and Horiguchi and him and Corrales, there ends up being kind of a lot of like weird grappling exchanges because he can't break them down, but those guys can't break his clasped hands. And if you don't know what clasped hands are in wrestling, in folk style wrestling and other wrestling, you cannot clasp your hands around someone's body, around their body, like their waist, unless if you have an arm. But you can do it standing. So in his position that he's doing it in, that would be legal in a wrestling match. But whenever you actually get someone on the mat, you're not allowed to clasp your hands. But he always has his hands clasped from the standing position, and people can't break that lock because it's almost like an infinite lock if you have a really good one. Gregor Gillespie, he loves that position. But the difference between Gregor and Caldwell is Gregor can mat return people well, and Caldwell can't. But what I saw on tape was I thought Corrales, he gets put on his back and doesn't always work his way up, and you saw that in the first round, and that's when Caldwell had his extremely dominant round. And I thought a lot of the fight was going to end up like that. I figured there would be some standing back take areas and failed mat returns for Caldwell, and it ended up being a little more than I thought. So the fight ended up, even though Caldwell 30-27'd him, it ended up being a little closer than I thought because Corrales ended up working to his feet a little more than he did in previous fights, but we still hit it. And when that lines were closing, I was just like, I know it kind of gets scary whenever lines close and you're on the wrong side of the line movement, but I tend to not let that shit bother me. I mean, if there's an injury or something you don't know about and that's why the line's moving, it just kind of is what it is. Like, you can't know that. And sometimes, like, I've seen a lot of line movement where the person who the line went towards ends up winning, and a lot of late line movement where that's not the case. So I just don't let it bother me and just kind of, whenever I'm really confident in a read, I end up just playing more. I remember Ricky Simone and Yaya. Everyone started throwing on Yaya late. I went more on Simone. Same thing happened with Usman Woodley. Everyone was going for Woodley late, and I ended up throwing more on Usman. And then there's times where it went the other way. So I don't think you should let that bother you. But yeah, and then Archuleta, I had a 1-unit play on Archuleta over Pitbull, and this is just a fight I just got wrong, and you just got to tip your cap to Pitbull. He's really good. He really impressed me last night, and I thought that blitzing game for Archuleta would kind of work because I've seen it work on Pitbull a little bit, but he was just ready for it, and he was countering with a right hand every single time. And he just looked really good. He's a good fighter, super good. I've always thought he was a solid fighter, but I was a little skeptical of him for the hype that he receives, but I think the hype's completely warranted. And he just looked really good. He's well-rounded, and he's one of those kind of guys who, he's not a wrestler, but he has learned wrestling fundamentals and can compete in MMA with really good wrestlers. So good on him. I did play him over Chandler, though, because he was too big of a dog in that fight. So yeah, that was just one I got wrong, and Pitbull looked really, really good. And then if we go to UFC Denmark, let me pull up the card. And sorry, I should have had this shit up already. First fight, Jack Shore and Noellen Hernandez. You guys knew I was pretty heavy on Shore there, and he came through, so that was good. It's honestly kind of the fight that I expected. I was close to max betting him, but I decided not to, just because whenever a guy looks good on regionals like Shore has, I've been really impressed with him. And I also think the guys Shore has been fighting, Scott Malone and other guys, are really good. It's just people don't really know much about those guys, but I actually think they're good. But sometimes when they get to the UFC, they can disappoint you a little bit and maybe not look as good. And sometimes it's better to have UFC fight sample sizes to kind of know how good someone is. So that was why I pulled my bet back a little bit. But I still threw, I think, like 3 units on Shore. And he's good. That's everything you want in a lower tier type of UFC fight, is you want a fighter who attempts a shitload of takedowns, attempts a shitload of strikes, and can't be held down. Because whenever you have that, sometimes you just kind of have to be finished. And that's kind of what I thought was needed here. And I thought the finish was very unlikely for Hernandez, because I pretty much threw the sub out the window, because Shore is really, really solid on the floor. And I just don't think a bantamweight KO is a standing KO like that is all that likely. And if Hernandez would have knocked Shore out, I wouldn't have been upset with my play on Shore. So yeah, Shore looked good. Jacasey and Venata. I ended up not playing this. You guys knew I was kind of wanting to play Jacasey, and the line didn't get exactly where I wanted. Easy to say in hindsight, but I do kind of regret not playing him a little bit, because the leg kick was there from the get-go, and he just kind of destroyed Venata. Jacasey's gotten really good. His wrestling's good for not having a background either. A lot of these guys, a lot of these really good athletes are picking up on wrestling, because I think Lando's overall grappling is pretty good. So, and Jacasey kind of out-grappled him as well. Landsberg and Chason. I had like a little bit of Chason in a parlay, so that got busted. But yeah, I was a little bit worried. I talked about it on the Gugabe podcast. If Chason grabs a single leg up against a cage and she just struggles with it, she doesn't know how to position her opponent or set up any single leg finishes. She kind of just tries to hope you lose balance by having your leg up in the air. And Landsberg, it was kind of a fight similar to when Landsberg just upset Tanya Evinger. It was really similar. Evinger and Chason are both very dependent on top position, and when they can't get it, they're just not that good. I do think what Chason should have done was, when she realized, and I think her corner was telling her this, when she realized she couldn't get the takedowns, she should have stood at distance and just struck. I don't know why she didn't do that, because she was hurt. She hit, I wouldn't say she like stunned Landsberg in some of those exchanges at distance, but some pretty heavy shots landed, and I don't think Landsberg liked them. But Lena just fought well. Davis and Jacasey, I ended up, I hit Goes the Distance live and Jacasey live. My live bets are usually not big, just because I can't get as much money down on those. But yeah, I thought I got the Goes the Distance, obviously, but at first I didn't get paid because it was a draw, but they reversed the scoring error, and then I ended up getting paid out, so that's cool. But it was I figured this would be a pretty close fight. Davis ended up grappling, but this was kind of my worry, is he may not grapple, so why would you kind of play Davis? And even if he does grapple, his grappling's not that great anyway, so I didn't know if it would even be that effective. So I figured this would be a pretty close fight, and I wasn't comfortable playing either guy. Nardiev and CR. I thought CR had a much better chance in this fight than it showed, and Ismail just kind of picked him apart. I think Ismail is good whenever you're not threatening or you can't get him down, because he throws a lot of volume and he's a good striker, and he can land his own spot takedown. So I think in fights versus strikers who don't have like all that much depth to their game, who can't get takedowns themselves, I think Ismail will do well, but I think Ismail will struggle against some of those just guys who have top control and good takedowns of themselves. That's where I think he can struggle, and that's when he tends to get tired in the grappling as well. So that's something I kind of jotted down about him watching him yesterday. Meredov and Alessio. Yeah, I figured Meredov, those people who got him around plus 150 or whatever, was a good play. I do think minus 150, I think that line was probably about dead accurate. I don't think there's really value on him or Alessio at the closing odds. I think the public kind of got this one right and got it to the right position. So the people who jumped on Muradov early, I think made a good pick. This was a close fight though. The second round, clear Muradov. Third round, clear Alessio. And the first round was close. I thought Muradov should have gotten it, but it was still a close round. And yeah, good fight though. Phillips Amandowski, I'm glad I laid off on this one. I missed a prop here of the over 1.5. And my reasoning for the over 1.5 was that they both are super low volume, and it seemed like in both their fights they were only throwing like and attempting like 20 strikes per round, so they just weren't even throwing that much, and both guys didn't seem all that fast. So I didn't think someone would close distance really easily and land, but Amandowski just charged in like a fucking moron and it just kind of became a phone booth brawl. So yeah, it kind of just is what it is. That fight was ridiculous. Dalby and Cowboy didn't end up playing this, and I thought Cowboy got absolutely fucked in the third round. I think there's 2 minutes left in the fight, and he was clearly winning round 3. And this fight, I actually suspected this fight would come down to who wrestles first type of dynamic, because both guys are going to really, really do well and possibly just win full rounds with top position. That ended up being what happened, and both guys were capable of getting takedowns. So it was kind of like who wrestles first. And Oliveira, I think, was going to win that fight in the third round, and the ref stood him up whenever Oliveira was in half guard landing big shots. And the funny thing is, I don't even... Like, there's times when someone's in top position, like Darian Caldwell is a good example, where he's not always advancing or doing anything, and you fear, like, when you're watching the fight, and if you're on Caldwell, you fear the ref to stand them up. But in a fight, like, in this fight, I didn't even think I wasn't even worried for Oliveira that the fight would get stood up in the third round. It just came out of nowhere. I thought it was that kind of egregious to stand them up there. Then, of course, Dalby gets top position and ends up riding it out. And I saw some people online kind of try to say, well, it happened to Dalby too. They stood him up at the end of the second round. But the difference between that is the stand-up in round 3 had a significant impact of the round scoring, where in round 2 it didn't. So I agree both stand-ups were kind of dumb, but one of them ended up not mattering, because in round 2 it was 10 seconds left and nothing ended up happening. I think Oliveira landed something after, but I don't think that didn't seem to have a huge impact. One, it didn't have an impact on the scoring, and I don't think it had an impact on the fight. Well, round 3 it was a complete swing, so that was kind of ridiculous. OSP and Lord. I had small parlay for Lord to close out, and he OSP just kind of hit a win condition. And something I learned in this fight is I kind of looked at Lord's grappling, and I really liked his conventional kind of ability to defend submissions and get back to his feet, and I think he kind of showed that in round 1. And what I learned in this fight is whenever there's kind of a submission specialist in one specific move, like OSP with this Von Flue choke, You have to be careful. Like, I definitely made a mistake here, and I think the mistake I made was, and something I'm going to learn from, and it's kind of like Alexei Oleinik too, is those specialized submissions, you can't really get a read on someone's defense on those because a lot of people just don't attempt them. So you really don't know if they can kind of defend a submission like that. Because right when OSP got that top position and Oleg grabbed over the head in round 2, it was like 25 seconds before the sub happened, I just go, God damn it, he's going to get Von Flewed. It was clear. And so I think what I learned here is anytime OSP fights someone, don't look at their conventional jiu-jitsu and assume they can stop a sub like that just because they stop other conventional subs. It's kind of a blind spot because you really don't know if they can stop a sub like this. I do think something you can also kind of look at is Oleinik with that Ezekiel choke. I think it really matters if you've trained with somebody who does these submissions, because a lot of people aren't proficient in OSP's Von Flue choke, so Lord probably couldn't get training partners who could mimic the type of proficiency that OSP has in that sub. But Overeem trained with Oleinik with the Ezekiel choke, so he's probably been put in that submission and kind of knew what it was like. So if people have trained with OSP, I think it's more likely they can probably stop a sub like that because they kind of know what to do. But yeah, sorry about that rant, but I do think you can't look at conventional jiu-jitsu all the time with OSP's opponents and assume they can stop that choke. Kudalaba Roundtree, I didn't play this. I think you guys know I was leaning Kudalaba and I thought he was going to win here, and I never bought into the Roundtree kind of Thailand 2.0 type of thing. I just think the reason why he obliterated Anders is because Anders just stood at the perimeter and did nothing, and he attempted one takedown after being kind of dropped multiple times, and usually Anders averages a lot more takedown attempts from that. So I think that Anders fight was just Anders kind of fighting like an idiot, and Kudalaba forced the issue. And in the striking, Roundtree's not as good in close quarters, and he tends to tire out quickly. But at range, and if he can fight at his own pace like Roundtree was able to do to Anders, Roundtree can do really well there and not get tired out. But whenever you mix in pressure and kind of takedowns, I think Roundtree is always going to have an issue with that. Gilbert Burns Nelson also leaned Burns, didn't play him. And yeah, it's kind of the fight I expected. I thought the grappling would kind of be pretty close, and I thought the person who got top position would dominate more, but it ended up being a lot more kind of just defending clinch takedowns. And on the feet, Burns was just busier. Nelson doesn't throw strikes, and that's just kind of a historic, repetitive thing in all of Nelson's fights. So yeah, Burns ended up winning. Matson Belluardo, I expected Matson to win. I'm still not sold on his grappling completely. I've seen holes in his jiu-jitsu because he's a straight line double leg guy, and I think eventually someone's going to get his back. But I had Matson in a parlay leg that ended up winning me money, but I did arb on some of that as well. So it ended up not mattering because Belluardo got destroyed, but yeah. And then Cannonier Hermanson, yeah, I thought Hermanson was gonna. I got worried whenever I rewatched the Glover fight against Cannonier that Glover was able to advance so much, and I was really worried about Cannonier on the floor. But he defended well, and Hermanson kind of struggles getting the fight down sometimes. He thrives in top position, but he couldn't get it there on Cannonier, and I think that was kind of his only game plan. It was, I'm going to wrestle, and then once it stopped working and he couldn't get takedowns, he was kind of fucked, and I think he was kind of tired too, and he was just panicked, and Cannonier put him away. And I know Gugabe played Cannonier, so good play by him. I ended up hitting Cannonier a little bit live. I didn't get much on him, but I think I hit him around like minus 120 or minus 130 after the first round, because I just thought Hermanson was kind of fucked at that point. But yeah, Gugabe hit Cannonier, so good on him. But that's the entire card, and I am going to I have one play on the next card, the Whitaker Adesanya card, And I don't think I'm going to have too many plays on that card. There's a lot of just low-level fights that I don't want to fuck with, but I'm probably going to have a couple money lines. And then the next card, the Waterson Joanna card, I have one max bet on that card already. And I'll kind of talk about that as the time comes. So just expect some videos this week and comment below. Thanks, guys.